In this video, I'm going to remove and replace the battery tray in my 2014 Dodge Avenger. I'll start by removing the negative connection of the battery to the car up here at the strut tower on the driver's side. Then I will put the car up on a jack stand and remove the driver's side front wheel tire. Then I will remove the inner fender plastic liner by pulling the 6 push pins and removing the 3 hex head screws that hold it in place. Then I'll slide it down and remove it from the car. The next step is to remove this hold down bolt. Sorry, I don't remember the millimeters. I did have to use a plastic mallet to drive the socket onto this really rusted bolt, and I did support it underneath with my hand so I wouldn't damage the tray in case I ever decide to use this tray in the future. And visible here is that metal hold down arm. Then I rotated this metal hold down arm upward, and it can be captured into this stowing position. Then the hold down assembly can be removed from the car. Next step is to remove this bolt on this diagonal support arm and also loosen the bolt on the top of that arm as well so the arm can be, then swing the arm down. Then I loosened up the pinch connectors on the battery and removed the battery from the tray. And then the tray has 5 hex head bolts that hold it to the chassis of the car. Just remove those bolts and then the tray can be lifted up and out. Here's the tray seen looking at the back of it. There are 2 hooks on the tray, on the battery tray, on the upper part of the battery tray. It's upside down here, of course. There's 1 hook on either side, and those engage to 2 slots that are in the frame rail of the car. Those hooks hold it in place while the bolts can be put in after the tray is set in place. So I have the old battery tray on the left and the new battery tray on the right. I am going to transfer all the hardware from the old battery tray to the new battery tray, namely those diagonal support arms. And they were somewhat rusty here, so I did clean them up and painted them where the rust was. I replaced at least one of those bolts at the lower end of the diagonal arms. And don't forget the little plastic tray that sits down in the bottom beneath the battery. That's expensive. It's like $35 if you buy it new. So here is a shot of the new battery tray with that little plastic liner set in place and the diagonal arms to the side. And here I've transferred the arms onto the new battery tray. I do take the opportunity to check the health of my battery when it's out of the car because the battery is so hard to get to. So I have this Schumacher load tester here. It's a voltage tester and a load tester. I'll put a link in the description for it. Yeah, if I'm going to this much trouble to change the tray, I definitely check the battery. This battery's like 10 months old, so it's definitely got some more life left in it. Anyway, the voltage is good, and there's a little red rocker switch there on this device that can be depressed for 10 seconds to test the current supply capability of the battery. It'll tell you whether it's good or bad. Mine was good. I also, maybe it wasn't necessary, but I did put the battery on a slow charge, just 2 amps for maybe 15 minutes or something like that. And then I also use these little felt pads on the battery. I presume they help prevent corrosion. This is important. That brown material on that the red metal in the upper part of the picture, that's actually acid that came up out of the battery when the battery apparently overheated or boiled over or something. It spit acid out. So I made sure I wiped all of that acid off. Of course, wearing rubber gloves when I was doing that. And above that metal piece, you can't really see it here, but is the TIPM, or the fuse and relay center. The TIPM is the totally integrated power module. So there's a bunch of wires up above that tray, and I also made sure that any battery acid that had gotten up on those wires was removed. I wiped that off as well. I think that's very important. Here's a close-up shot of that acid spatter on that metal. And again, I wiped that off. Okay, so now it's time for the battery tray to go back in the car. And the hook that I showed earlier, or the hooks that I showed earlier, or the 1 hook that I showed earlier on the back of the battery tray, those hooks, there's one on either side of the battery tray. They slip into these little rectangular holes in the frame rail of the car. So you can just set the battery tray in place and then put the bolts in place. Here it is with the bolts installed. So here are the 5 bolts, hex head bolts. Tighten those in place. I will say one thing about this battery tray. It's a Dorman. It's not the Mopar original battery tray. The original battery tray that came in the car, it was so easy to take out and put in. You just set it in place. As I explained earlier, you just push it in place, and those little hooks go through those rectangular holes in the frame rail, and you can take your time putting the bolts in place, no pressure. But the bolt holes on this, the hooks went in place fine. It's set in place fine on the frame rail, no problem there with the Dorman piece, but the holes were a little off center. So this really took like what would be like a 5-minute job and made it like a 30-minute job. It was a little aggravating because I really didn't, it's kind of blind operating up in there. You really can't see up in there. I couldn't see up in there. I have to do everything just kind of by feel. So the holes were not aligned properly. It took me some time to figure that out. It probably took 30 minutes to get everything bolted in place. So with the OEM battery tray, it probably takes 5 minutes. With this one, at least with my learning curve, it took me like 30 or 35 minutes to get it bolted in place, but it worked fine. So it's about half the price. The Dorman piece is like maybe half the price of the factory Mopar OEM part. So then I set the battery in place and reconnected the pinch connectors, and I also sprayed them with like a protective spray here. Again, it's tight quarters in here, so the spray, I was very careful. I put like some paper towels or some paper or something behind the battery terminals, so when I sprayed that spray, it comes out kind of like a mist or aerosol spray. I didn't want it getting all over places in the car where it wasn't supposed to be. So I did that, plus when I was finished spraying it, I did wipe down the top of the battery to remove any of that stuff from the battery. It's only necessary to get it on the metal connectors. Here's another close-up shot of that. And here's the hold down assembly. The old one is on the left, the new one is on the right. And here I've separated the plastic piece from the metal bar. And in my case, I very slightly filed down the inner channel, not the outside, but the inner channel where that metal bar fits down in there in a captive way. It snaps into place, and it can be kind of hard to deal with when I'm working in tight places up there above that battery. So I filed this down, not extreme, just a little bit, so that it made the metal bar and this plastic T-piece easier to separate. So then I put the battery hold down assembly in place and tightened down those 3 bolts. And then the next step was to tighten to restore the battery negative connection there at the strut tower on the driver's side of the car. Fairly straightforward. Then not shown, I did of course put the plastic fender liner back in place with its 6 push pins and 3 hex head fasteners. Then I put the tire wheel back on the car, torqued everything to spec, lowered the car off the jack stand. I was good to go. I'll put links in the description for any parts here that I'm able to find. And if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching.